Dead Ends. Written by Jonathan Dunne. Narrated for you by the author. Dead Ends 3. The Dark Web. It was around 3:15 a.m. on Saturday when Jessica's pleasant dream slipped into a nightmare. The dream had started with Jessica and her dad in her bedroom. She was sitting in her bed, yoga style, peering up at her father standing atop a ladder as he worked on the bedroom ceiling, scraping off old paint to prepare for a fresh coat of white paint. And while he was up there, Dad was going to stick some glow-in-the-dark stars around the 6-year-old's space rocket lampshade. Jessica loved anything space-related, and her favourite film was E.T., and she still cried when Michael discovered the ashen alien dying in the icy waters, running through a culvert. In the dark version, that scratching came from the sharp edge of the paint scraper on Jessica's bedroom ceiling. The 6-year-old observed paint flakes as they peeled and pirouetted through the air and landed on the bedroom floor. Her dad worked his right arm back and forth, rasping off that stubborn old paint. He was so high up that his head was almost in the clouds. And then her dream room filled with puffy clouds, and all she was able to perceive was her headless father with his head in the clouds. She giggled in her sleep. Those cumulus clouds melted away just as quickly as they had formed. But as they fizzled away, Jessica noticed the attic hatch to the left of where her father was stripping the flaking paint. The 6-year-old didn't know why she was looking at that little door in the ceiling, yet it fascinated her. But something unseen in her dream up there had caught her attention. But she didn't know it yet. Jessica stared at that chipboard hatch as if she had never seen it in her life, but that made little sense because it was one of the first things she saw in the morning when she opened her eyes, and one of the last things she saw at night before closing her eyes. And with all these glowing stars on her ceiling night sky, she would notice it even more. The attic hatch was in Jessica's bedroom. The 6-year-old didn't know why, because when she went to her friend Lucy's birthday party, she saw that the attic door was above the upstairs landing where they were playing with Lucy's reborn babies. And her bestie, Ava's house, had the hatch door in the bathroom ceiling. Jessica knew that because it was above the toilet. Sometimes, when she had to use the bathroom, she imagined something opening that hatch and looking down at her. She didn't like Ava's bathroom and always held on as long as she could until she had no choice but to use Ava's toilet. Sometimes she was so scared of her best friend's bathroom that she wet herself. Maybe that was why she was having this bad dream. The was growing louder now. But something strange was filtering into her dream. That rhythmic scratching filled her head as Dad worked his strong arm back and forth, Jessica frowned. It was weird, but when Dad dropped his right arm by his side to rest it for a moment, that scratching continued for a second longer and only stopped when the rasping sound, realized Jessica's dad wasn't working on the ceiling. It was like playing red light, green light in the schoolyard when she would shout, "Red light," and spin around to catch her friends trying to sneak up behind her. Her dad began scratching again, and the fell into tandem with his paint scraper. And now she was glad again, watching her dad working in her bedroom. It was nice to have him here with her. When Dad came in here, it was to help Jessica with her homework or perhaps pick out her clothes from her wardrobe. Yes, it was. Her dad stepped down from the ladder and grabbed his steaming mug of coffee in Jessica's dresser. But the scratching continued on the ceiling, and for longer this time. How was that happening? Her dad was supping coffee and smiling at his little princess while that raspy scratching sounded right above his head. In the haze of slumber, she realized he couldn't hear it. But she could hear it. How can Dad not hear it? In this bedroom, Jessica's world strangely out of kilter with the rest of the world, she raised her arm in slow motion and pointed to the upside-down door in the ceiling. Jessica realized the noise wasn't coming from the ceiling. That ominous scraping was coming from inside. The attic hatch. There was something up there. She tried to tell her dad that there was something up there and it wanted to come out. But unblinking Dad kept smiling at Jessica, and smiling, and smiling. It was only now that she realized he had come undone and was stuck in time. She screamed at Dad to do something, anything. Blink, for the love of Jesus. Go and see what's up there in the attic, please. But little Jessica couldn't hear her voice as she yelled and screamed. Dad smiled and held his coffee to his face, but it never touched his lips after those first few sips. Now Dad was hiding his face behind his Happy Father's Day coffee mug, eyeing her through the mug handle. Daddy was a glitch in the spider-webbing fabric of this nightmare. Jessica thought about the hatch in Ava's bathroom ceiling and how she thought she saw that door lift a little and searing snow-white eyes looked down at her through the slit. Whether she was a world heavyweight boxing champion or a 6-year-old girl who had a penchant for reborn babies, she was at her most vulnerable when sitting on the toilet, going about her business. That was the one place she was supposed to feel safe and have her privacy. But Jessica woke. Or did she? Was she still dreaming? Someone had switched the light out. Her bedroom was in darkness save for the shard of light coming from the hallway and the moonlight streaming through her window at the bottom of her bed. Her bedroom had grown silent, and Dad wasn't here anymore. The little girl felt the creeping bristle of fear and sunk into her blankets. She listened out for that reassuring low mumble of chatter when Mom and Dad talked downstairs. But the house was quiet, except for that scratching that had escaped from her dream. She was about to call out for Mom when the ceiling chafing suddenly stopped. It was only now that Jessica realized she was holding her breath and could feel and hear her pumping blood pulsing in her temples and the twang of her heart in her chest. She'd never thought about her heart before, and in that moment in time, she questioned how it kept going, even when she wasn't thinking about keeping it going. And click. The attic door clinked as the latch slowly opened above her. From her bed, she observed that glinting bolt slip back. The 6-year-old knew that the latch could also be opened from inside the attic, just in case someone got trapped up there. Jessica's eyes flitted to the hatch framed against the ceiling and were just about visible in the ethereal light of the moon. The 6-year-old desperately wanted those glow-in-the-dark stars now to shed some friendly light on this blooming darkness in her bedroom. And come to think of it, the patch of bare ceiling where Dad had scratched off the old paint wasn't there anymore. Her dad had never touched her ceiling. Yet she'd seen him on top of the folding ladder, by God, wiggling back and forth as he worked the paint from the ceiling. Jessica even noticed his jiggling belly up underneath his rugby shirt from her bed. Suddenly she was terrified, so afraid she couldn't bring herself to call out for Mom or Dad. Wait, maybe Dad was up there in the attic. A moment of confusion flowed between sleeping and waking. Maybe he'd gone up there and somehow got trapped. That still didn't explain the absence of a ladder. How would he have got up there without a ladder? Did somebody take it away? Jessica looked about the room but couldn't see any ladder. The hatch door lifted a little more. In this shade of darkness, the 6-year-old observed that slice of black widen in the ceiling as the door opened. She heard a muffled and distressed voice coming from up there. Jessie! Jessie, darling! Help me! I'm stuck! Mom! Jessica called out, and this time she could hear her own voice. Where are you? Mom's voice was coming from the very walls all around her. She looked about in the darkness for her dad, but Dad was gone. Such was her desperation that Jessica even confused her standing mirror for Dad. It was dark in the bedroom, and shapes took on a life of their own. I'm up here, sweetie. I'm stuck, came the whispering voice. Look up. Can you see me? Jessica squirmed down into her blankets, only her peeping eyes visible now. She didn't want to look up, but something crept into view from the darkness above her. Through the hole in the hatch came a pale arm, reaching down, down, down for her. It came all the way down from the ceiling, right down to her bed. Take my hand, Jess. I need your help up here. I'm stuck. There was something strange about the way Mommy in the ceiling was talking. She kept saying, I'm stuck, but it sounded like those very words were stuck. She said them with the same intonation each time, as if those words were a recording, and had been recorded in a tin can, because it sounded as if Mom was speaking from inside a tin can. The fingers on the hand at the end of the long arm wriggled right above her, even stroking her tousled hair. Girly giggles came from the hole in the ceiling. Listening to her mom laugh lit Jessica up inside, and the bedroom wasn't so dark anymore. Those titters became her glow-in-the-dark giggles. "Come on, Jessie. Grab my hand. Someone shut the door on me. I'm stuck." I'm stuck. Nothing made any sense. Jessica cowered. "You promise?" "I'm stuck, Jess," came the robotic reply. It was as if those two words, "I'm stuck," verified everything. Going against her instinct, the 6-year-old withdrew her right arm from beneath the warm bed covers and reached up towards the jiggling fingers. Jessica, convinced she was only in a dream or helpless against her actions because she didn't know she was in a dream, took hold of the wriggling fingers, and that hot, pulsing hand snapped shut around the girl's wrist. A little too tight for comfort. And before Jessica knew what was happening, she was pulled out of her bed and upwards towards the ceiling. She looked down as she left her bed below in the shadows. But no sooner was she levitating when the hand clutching her wrist turned prickly as thick, bristling hairs grew from the palm of the blanched hand. Jessica winced as she felt those needle-like hairs prick the flesh around her wrist, and with one great spurt of speed she was going up, up, up through the ceiling and into the attic. The long prickling arm laid the 6-year-old down by the open hatch in the ceiling. Jessica watched her mom's impossibly long, pale arm retract behind a few boxes of junk. As it did, the rest of the arm snapped into joints, blackened and bristled. Not that the child was privy to this information, but the perfect arachnid leg consisted of 7 segments. Starting from the fat, hairy body sprouted the coxa, trochanter, femur, patella, tibia, metatarsus, and tarsus. What Jessica saw with her own 2 eyes retreating behind that pile of junk was a 6-foot-long spider's leg in all its arachnophobic glory. She peered down through the hole to her bed below. It was odd to see her bed and bedroom from this angle. It did and didn't look like her own bedroom. The 6-year-old imagined this was what a spider saw when it looked down at her at night from one of the ceiling corners. Jessica still wasn't sure how she'd ended up in the attic. "Mom? Mom?" There was no answer this time. From beyond the cardboard boxes came that pulsing ksh, ksh, ksh again. It was much louder up here inside the roof. Jessica was too small to see over the junk pile, but the looming shadows cast by the low light of the motion sensor lighting Jessica's dad installed cast strange shadows on the black roof, lining above the girl's head. She watched the shadow show as long, spindly limbs, twice her size, worked in tandem, spinning like a spinning wheel. Jessica knew what an old spinning wheel was because her teacher, Miss Gavin, had shown them how clothes were made long ago at school that same week. The old wrinkled woman with the headscarf working the wheel in her schoolbook gave her the creeps, but she wasn't anything like what Jessica was and wasn't seeing on this Saturday night in the attic. And speaking of that secret room right above her bed, it was only now the 6-year-old saw that the timber rafters forming the internal structure of the roof were coated in enormous stretches of gummy spiderwebs, stretching from one beam to another like hammocks. She stole up to the little mountain of cardboard boxes and peered through a slit, and forgot to breathe when she realized what made that scratching sound on her ceiling. With wide, disbelieving eyes, the 6-year-old watched an enormous, hairy-legged spider, but, "Mommy!" It wasn't Mom at all. It never had been. Yes, it was her mom. Kind of. There was a huge spider back there, but with Mommy's head. Her 8 busy arachnid legs with prickling razor-sharp bristles were spinning something with the delicacy and finesse of a master seamstress. Came the metrical rubbing of her hind legs. With strange fascination and repulsion, Jessica watched her mother's pale face devoid of any expression as she toiled over her work. It was strange to see Mom with no arms, but 8 legs, in this surreal loft in the upper reaches of her brain. Spider Mom turned and looked at Jessica through the slit between the boxes. Eight-legged Mommy smiled at the 6-year-old, holding the child's wide-eyed gaze while her legs worked independently of her. It might not have been so bad if her mom had rows of eyes like a spider, 12 peeping black eyes planted across her forehead. But she was just her same old mom. The face part of her, at least. Somehow, that made it worse. What are you doing? I'm making you a new dress, sweetie. Do you like it? Fashioned from the finest silk. Jessica looked at the jumble of wrapped silk on the floor as the mom in the attic weaved. The 6-year-old watched the cobweb dress grow arms as the hideous creature worked on the garment. Are you Mommy? With dreamlike logic, the fact that her mom had the body of an oversized arachnid didn't seem all that disturbing to the 6-year-old. The hellish vision told Jessica, I am the cobweb seamstress, esteemed member of the dark web. I am fashioning this cobweb dress for an impromptu guest for tonight's feast. The little girl smiled. Who's your guest? You, whispered the thing in the loft, its spindly legs working faster now, spinning silk in a blur of claw work. Jessica clapped her hands with excitement. Come and sit next to me, beckoned Spider Mom. Sit on these boxes that the man in the house left here. At this succinct juncture, the 6-year-old did question why her dream mom would refer to her dad as the man in the house. This seemed to have more impact on her than the fact that her mother had 8 legs and lived in the attic. For the next 20 days, or was it 20 minutes, young Jessica watched her altered mother spin the finest cobweb dress she had ever seen, the first dress of spider silk she had ever seen. Mother's multitasking legs fascinated her, how they spun, stabbed and sliced those threads of silk. The scratching stopped. The giant mother spider raised the exquisite cobweb dress to the light with 4 long stubbled legs. Do you like it? The seamstress spider's voice still sounded as if she were speaking into an empty tin can. Jessica thought that Mom's voice sounded like that because she was speaking from up in the attic. But now the mom in the loft was here, plump, black and hairy in the dim light, not 2 feet from her. Yet she still sounded the same, as if she was talking to the girl from somewhere else. Jess? Jessica nodded, amazed by the fine filigree pattern highlighted in the bulb's light. The dress pattern was a series of intricately laced cobwebs, and the more she gazed upon the design, the more it had a strange, tranquilizing effect on the 6-year-old. The dream spider watched with certain relish as the entranced little girl stared at her handiwork. Her eyes flashed, and she smacked her lips. Try it on, sweetie. How do you know it's going to fit me? I've been watching you through the door while you sleep. The little girl smiled and nodded. She may have smiled, but she wasn't smiling inside. With trepidation, Jessica slipped out of her Grinch PJs. I'm stuck, whispered the creature for no apparent reason. The girl looked at her mom and for a second couldn't see her mom anymore, but a nightmare spider trying its best to look like Mummy. It was as if the effects of the tranquilizer were wearing off and those first slicing shards of dulled pain were being felt. Why do you keep saying that you're stuck? The clicking spider lifted one of its front claws to Mom's lips in a secretive gesture. That surreal vision of the black, prickling, hooked claw held to Mommy's lips was something the child couldn't take on board. It was all wrong on every level of her 6-year-old conscience and instinct. This thing in the attic was creeping in more ways than one now. Spider-Mom stared at Jessica, and the girl didn't feel so safe anymore. She glanced over her shoulder at the hole in the upside-down floor. Lift your arms, darling. Try on your new dress. Claustrophobic with crawling dread, Jessica lifted her arms. She couldn't bear to look at Mommy anymore, so closed her eyes. Out of that darkness came soft, echoey, chiming and brittle words. Eensy-weensy spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out. Out came the sun and dried up all the rain. So Weensy Jessica climbed up to the attic again. That sticky, body-hugging spiderweb dress curled down over her like a snug glove. It tickles, said the child, but her timid giggle dried up when the 6-year-old realized there wasn't a hole for her head to pass through. Instead, it had a fitted pouch almost like a hood, but completely enclosed, and it measured little Jessica's head with deadly precision. The creature, not fully spider, not fully mommy, tugged the cobweb dress tightly over her head. The 6-year-old girl appeared to be a smothering pint-sized bank robber. The spider thing crept backwards to get a proper look at Jessica in her new cobweb dress. Its claws clicked on the raised attic floor in approval. Beautiful, Jessie. Welcome to the esteemed dark web. You are the most important guest at tonight's feast. And that hellish entity giggled, just like before when the 6-year-old heard her from her bed. Why, without you we don't even have a feast. Jessica was finding it difficult to breathe through the face mask of spider silk. And maybe it was her imagination or just part of this spreading nightmare, but she was sure the dress was getting tighter around her chest. She was sinking deeper and deeper. The silk mask stuck to her nostrils and mouth. The 6-year-old felt like something in a bag in the kitchen downstairs, and her mom was using a giant vacuum sealer to suck all the air out to keep her fresh in an airtight environment. All that was missing now was keeping her in storage. The creeping perversion took hold of the little girl in his prickling clutches, then raised her high off the floor. The freak of nature levitated the flailing 6-year-old to the highest point of the attic. Between two rafters, the arachne human placed the feast, the main dish known locally as Jessica, a.k.a. Jessie or Jess, into a cobweb hammock and rolled and rolled. The wriggling child suspended in the roof beams looked like modern art to the multi-limbed, admiring monstrosity. Juvenile screams were music to its ears, and it couldn't help but lick its mom lips. The more she tried to get away, the more entangled Jessie became. I'm stuck! These words, I'm stuck, carried resonance for the mom in the attic of Jessica's nightmare. It paused for thought. Those words came from the mists of déjà vu. In a previous lifetime, it was a spider or a mom or a spider. It couldn't decide. Jessica screamed. I want to wake up! I'm in a bad dream! You're not real! Mom? Dad? She wheezed through the layers of asphyxiating silk. Seeing the child still had fight left in her, the behemoth reached a silent foreleg right across the loft and eased the hatch door shut. It then spurted another thread of silk from its rear end. The convulsive workings of her hind legs spun a suffocating web to silence the child's muffled cries. It's all a bad dream. I'm having a nightmare. Jessica's dulled words fell silent. In the bedroom across the hallway, Mr. Hannigan woke. Was it just a dream, or did he hear his 6-year-old daughter calling out? He held his breath and listened in the darkness. From somewhere above him, he heard a faint thud, followed by a repeated shh, shh, shh on the ceiling. Rats in the attic again, he whispered. Mrs. Hannigan roused from her sleep and responded with a confused, Huh? Bats? Rats? I think they're back. Sounds like they're having a dance-off up there. Call the exterminator in the morning. Oh, by the way, mention nothing to Jessie. How many times has she told us there's something up there? Bad dreams, that's all. Good night. Good night.